Welcome, everyone. Today is Earth Day, and it's a privilege to host this event aligned with Earth Day's 2023 global theme, Invest in Our Planet. We are acutely aware that this is a massive task that can only be accomplished through global multi-stakeholder collaboration. The symposium offers an opportunity to bring together speakers that represent academia, governments, not-for-profit entities, agencies dedicated to global impact change, and entrepreneurship, of course. The World Business Angel Investment Forum Miami office is honored to celebrate Earth Day 2023 and committed to supporting the United Nations 2050 Net Zero Agenda by organizing a virtual symposium and innovation showcase. These events aim to focus on climate change, ocean sustainability, and supporting entrepreneurship to grow the net zero economy. We are grateful to University of Miami's Institute for Data Science and Computing, and to all our other partners for the opportunity to highlight the current global landscape and how to accelerate the transition towards a more sustainable future by supporting innovation and entrepreneurship. Our agenda today, just briefly, will include welcome remarks in a second. Then we have a few keynotes prepared for you, an interactive panel discussion, and later on today, we also have an innovation showcase for those of you that wish to witness innovation at its best and how we deploy technologies, particularly deep tech technologies, to change the world as we know it and contribute to net zero. But without further ado, please allow me now to introduce Dr. Nicholas Tinoremas. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address this global conference on Earth Day. So welcome, everyone. And I think, this is actually an opportunity for all of us to think about, our planet, sustainability, and what it means for businesses. And we all need to understand that a good business also means that we need to be responsible. We need to understand about our future. We need to understand how we better live, in our environment and how we can make our living environment more sustainable. And there is a number of opportunities, I would imagine, in the entrepreneurial arena to actually help us, if you will, think about the future. So the things that we've been doing in the past. So to give you some ideas and how technology can help and can technology accelerate for us to have more responsibility and more understanding of how we can better work in our environment into this kind of, bi-directional approach. So for example, the combustion engine has been invented in the mid-900s. In the early 900s, I should say. And since then, only very recently, actually, we are actually trying to introduce electric cars and what it means and how the technology. So we spent almost 100 years with something that it was developed and it was invented 100 years ago. I think that we need to be rethinking about this, of how we can actually do things better. But also we have to be conscious about how we better live with our environment. And to be honest with you, if we do that, that also means better business, because that also means that we are actually changing and evolving what we are actually trying to do. And in this Earth Day, I think we all need to figure out ways to live better in our environment. Definitely, our environment has got challenges. We go through climate change. We go through a number of different transitional technologies, if you will, and traditional aspects as human race. So we all need to have this responsibility, and there's a lot of opportunities there appearing. As I mentioned before about the, the combustion engine, I also want to tell you is that, for example, for all of us to think, even the battery technology, in my opinion, is transitional. So we need to be thinking about what is a more sustainable energy, a more renewable energy, because the batteries, frankly, rely on heavy metals like lithium that it's very rare. So at some point, that will become, a limiting factor. We cannot really find lithium and having the whole world on batteries. So it's really something as a transitional technology. So we need to be thinking about how we can go more and more in sustainability. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we should not do, the batteries and so forth, and develop technologies that will make more efficient batteries and so forth. But also we need to be thinking, what is the next step? How we are all going to live in that aspect, right? So, and the same kind of thing, as the director of the data science and computing at the University of Miami and a vice provost for data, we're also having, data-driven approaches, but that can help us actually as humans. I think that the data to build a better future for all of us, and the opportunities, in the this is actually what you are, in my opinion, the entrepreneurial community is going to change the way that we behave. Some of the older companies and more established companies, they have the ways of doing this, right? They are traditional companies. So we have the responsibility to think about how best live in our environment, how we become more resilient, how become more adaptive, but also how we disrupt sometimes the way that we do things, because we've learned to do things one way, but that may not be the way of the future. So I don't want to take much more time. I know that you have a full day and very great panel of speakers today. So welcome all of you again, and I hope that you will have a very robust discussion and think and challenge each other of what it is the next level. And basically, if we do good, good is good for business. That's something that we all need to be keeping in mind, right? There is not really some kind of a friction between doing good and being good for business. So that's something I will look forward to this meeting. Welcome again, and thank you all and thank you, Ingrid, for allowing me to open this very exciting global forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tinoremas. And for those of you that might not be aware, Dr. Tinoremas, in partnership with many other important key stakeholders, recently organized Climate Resilience for Smart Cities conference at and same, we had wonderful discussions, a lot of call to action. So thank you again for hosting that and for your partnership with WBAF Miami. And now, please allow me to introduce our first keynote speaker. We're going to switch a little bit, change order, because Councilwoman Digna Cabral had to send us a video, but I will play her video at the end. So now, please allow me to introduce Dr. Ben Kurtman. He's a professor of atmospheric sciences at the University of Miami Rosenfield Schools of Marine and Atmospheric Science. In his research, Dr. Kurtman uses atmosphere-ocean general circulation models to study the predictability and variability of the Earth's climate system. Dr. Kurtman serves also as director of the Cooperative Institute for Marine and Atmosphere Studies at the University of Miami, and as program director for climate and environmental hazards at the University of Miami Centers for Computational Science. Dr. Kurtman has served as a research scientist at the Center for Ocean Land Atmospheric Studies and was an associate professor at the George Mason University before he joined the Rosenfield School in 2007. Dr. Kurtman has published over 100 peer-reviewed papers focused on understanding the variability of the climate system on timescales from days to decades. He's also the executive director of Climate Dynamics and an associate editor of the Journal of Geophysical Research. Additionally, he's the lead investigator of the North American Multimodal Ensemble experiment. He's the co-chair of the NOAA Climate Prediction Task Force and the coordinating lead author on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Assessment Report 5. In 2008, he was awarded as a distinguished alumnus for the Department of Atmospheric and Ocean Sciences at the University of Maryland, College Park. Dr. Kurtman has completed his PhD and Master of Science degrees at the University of Maryland, College Park, and his Bachelor of Science for Applied Mathematics at University of California, San Diego. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this wonderful keynote. I recently had an opportunity to hear probably one of the best keynotes on this topic, and I'm excited to share with you Dr. Kurtman. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Ingrid, and happy Earth Day, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I want to thank Ingrid and the other organizers for inviting me to participate. Let me just share my screen here. All right. And So I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about solving the climate crisis. There's a little bit of evangelizing on how to do this. And one of the big opportunities that I want to underscore is a huge gap between what the governments are doing, national labs are doing in terms of providing climate information that is actionable, that is useful for entrepreneurs or decision support. And there's a huge gap between what the national labs provide, what we currently provide, and what's actually needed to spur entrepreneurship and to solve the problems on the ground. And so that's kind of one big theme that I want to push throughout this, and I'll describe more about that. I want to start a little bit with just sort of remembering what happened a few days ago in Fort Lauderdale. Just a few days ago, we had this massive one-day rainstorm. It dropped over 24 inches of rain in Fort Lauderdale, and it was just a terrific coming together, a perfect storm. We had two weather systems, if you will, that locked this very small thunderstorm in place. It stuck there for 24 hours, and you can see from this picture that it was right there on the coast, and so this warm Florida current that sits right near the coast was fueling this storm with lots of warm water, lots of rainfall. And this event, in terms of a 24-hour rainfall, was labeled in the media and based on past history as a 1 in 1,000 chance event. I think with the changing climate, it's no longer a 1 in 1,000 chance event, but it is also the top three. It's in the top three rainfall events, 24-hour rainfall events in the United States. So this was a massive storm. We had lots of flooding. People are blaming it on for the gas shortage that we've been having, lots of disruption associated with the storm. And so now the second picture I want to show here, this is the gap. I think this really highlights the gap. So this is what the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change is providing governments of the world. This is what an international cadre of scientists are putting together, making a statement about the global climate system. And this sort of summarizes that whole picture. What I'm showing you here is in the top panel is if you assume the global mean temperature, the average temperature around the globe goes up by 1.5 degrees, what does that look like spatially? And then if you go across the column, if the global mean warms by 2 degrees, what does it look like? And then 3 degrees. And so you can see that, continental regions are much warmer than ocean regions. And of course, the poles tend to warm faster than the rest of the world. So this is all sort of stuff we know. The bottom panel, this is where there's the gap, right? So the bottom panel relates to this event in Fort Lauderdale. This is the one-day maximum rainfall event, or the change in the one-day maximum rainfall event. And so wherever you see the green colors, there's a percentage increase associated with these various levels of warming in the one-day rainfall total. So you can see in some places of the world, it gets as high as a 50% increase in the one-day total rainfall, but it's a very blurry map. It's very hard to even pick out Florida, let alone Fort Lauderdale. And so this is the gap, that we've provided this global scale, or at least continental scale guidance to governments in order to develop policy about CO2 emissions going out to 2100 and based on various warming levels. But in terms of dealing with the problem locally, this information is of little use at best. So this is the challenge. How do we produce hyperlocal information and make that hyperlocal information available, or as part of entrepreneurship, or make that hyperlocal information available for decision support? And that's not being done. That's what's not being done. This is what I think is an enormous opportunity in terms of technology, all kinds of new innovation. This is where that can be done. Just to show you, this is the kind of work. I'm just going to show you a few more science slides, and then I'll be done quickly. But I just to show you a number of key points about this. fire hose of information that this whole intergovernmental panel on climate change, what this process provides, this fire hose of information, and yet it's still the synthesis, the putting that together to make, like I said, to encourage entrepreneurship and to make decisions is the missing step. It's just not being done. And so what this is showing you on the right-hand side, this is the kind of work that I do, taking global climate models, introducing observed greenhouse gases over the past history. And we run hundreds of these models. In this case, it's a total of 63 different models that are being run. We run it over the history and we ask, how well do we reproduce the observed climate? And so in that top panel, that on the right-hand side, the black curve is the observed climate, and the red curve is the average of all these huge number of models. And we note the volcanic emissions. And so you can see the volcanic emissions, global mean temperature decreases. People are thinking about using the stuff that volcanoes emit, sulfate aerosols, as a way of mitigating the effects of CO2. So you can see why that thought comes out. What you can see is that these, none of these models are perfect. None of them capture all the details of the natural variability right in phase with observed. They're not supposed to, they can't, but they all show that the climate system is warming. And it's sort of unequivocal. It's been warming precipitately since the 1950s. And on the left-hand side, we've decomposed all the various components of what leads to that temperature change. In the top panel, we're showing you the natural drivers, volcanic emissions that we talked about, solar. My father used to always tease me. He's a physicist. It's the sun, stupid, no pun intended. But, how does the solar emissions, solar flares, has often been blamed for the warming of the climate. And we can see here that solar emission is not a big effect. Orbital parameters, how the Earth rotates and how it revolves around the other planets in the sun, how that could affect the global temperatures. Again, that doesn't do it. The middle panel is all those human influences. Ozone is a human influence, land cover changes. And then again, you see this aerosols here, this introducing pollutants and that in the atmosphere to try to reflect more sunlight back to space has a cooling effect. And then in the purple curve, you can see the warming due to increases in CO2. And when you add up all those influences in the bottom panel, you can see that we're able to reproduce a significant amount of what's happening to the global climate system. And so the argument here is that, yes, we have the tools to talk about how the global climate system is evolved in the past, and we can then talk about how the global climate system will evolve into the future. And what I'm advocating here is these modeling tools are the first step. They're publicly available, they're provided, there's the first step. But to take the next step in order to produce something that's actionable or useful for developing entrepreneurship, that work needs to be done. That is where there's a huge open turf of technology and innovation that hasn't happened. So in this plot in the upper left, we'll drill down a little bit. This is looking how temperatures are going to change going forward into the future. Again, using the same set of models to assess how the temperature would change in the future. You can see there's two different axes here because you want to be careful about temperature change relative to what time period. And what you can see is in some scenarios, the climate system is warming a great deal. And in others, where the bluer curves, in fact, the brightest blue, relies on a technology that would actually lead to negative emissions, would actually pull carbon out of the atmosphere. That's demanding technology that doesn't exist today. And may not exist for some time in order to reduce the CO2 in the atmosphere, but yet different warming levels given the different scenarios that you put into these models for what the future would look like. And of course, this leads to changes in precipitation. Again, you see a fairly systematic response. the warmer the climate system, the larger the increases in precipitation. So out to 2100, with the warmest climate, say 3 degrees warmer, we're seeing something on the order of 10% increase in precipitation globally. That's the global average. Locally, you can see significant up to 50% changes in extreme rainfall. And how we actually make an assessment of when that would happen, where that's going to happen, what it's going to do to 1 in 1,000-year flood events, 1 in 100-year flood events. Those are all the big open turf in terms of both the science and the technology. Sea ice is really an important, it's kind of like a canary in the coal mine. It's an important indicator that the climate system is not in equilibrium, it's not in balance. And this is showing you the evolution of Arctic sea ice from all these models going forward into the future. And on this graph, the dashed line says it's practically ice-free Arctic in the summer. That's a really important marker in the future. So we're looking at somewhere maybe as early as the mid-century that there might be an Arctic-free summer. Think about that in terms of shipping, resource capture, conflict that's going to result by having a fully navigable Arctic in the summer. So that's a game changer in geopolitics, economics throughout the world. So that's a big deal. The reason the Arctic sea ice is a sort of the canary in the coal mine is you think of the Arctic as a keyhole, right? There's continents surrounding it and ocean in the middle. So the ocean is kind of trapped. And so the ice in the Arctic is really very, very old. And so we're seeing very, very old ice that's been there for many, many years. We're seeing that ice start to melt. And that's why I call that a canary in the coal mine, because that ice should not be melting. It's ice that's thousands of years old. And so that's why this is turning into being a canary in the coal mine. And then the last one I'll show here, and this, again, the last sort of science result, if you will. And then I want to sort of talk about some of these opportunities and some other things. This is now looking at sea level. This is a big deal here in Florida. This is looking at the sea level changes that we see associated with all of these scenarios. Again, if you look at the blue scenario there, the brightest blue one going into the future, you notice that the temperature doesn't stop warming. The temperature doesn't stop warming. The CO2 level doesn't stop changing, even though emissions stabilize in that blue scenario. And that's really an important point. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But you can see the various scenarios up to, in some of these scenarios, up to close to 1 meter of global sea level change, and some extreme scenarios, that dashed curve, much more than that. Now, the challenge is, great, we've made this huge assessment of global sea level change, global temperature, global rainfall. That's useless information for the individual. That's useless. That's almost useless information for governments and businesses and things. They need to know, what does all this mean locally for me? How do I take advantage of these opportunities, and how do I mitigate the risks that are associated with them? That's a very local decision. As Fort Lauderdale can tell you, there's this huge increase of local rainfall over a very short period, over a day, but over a very small region. So how do we start dealing with it? That's the big challenge. That's where we need to get outside this box that the climate community is in and start really thinking about making climate information at hyperlocal scales. Now, so going forward, there's a few key points that I want to make. One, the first key point I want to make is that when we think about the climate crisis and moving forward, there's a need to decouple emissions from economic growth. Decouple emissions from economic growth and GDP. So all of those scenarios that I showed you, how much CO2 would be at and how much temperature response you get, that's all based on a very simple relationship that increases in GDP necessarily mean increases in emissions. We need to break that cycle. There are some countries and governments around the world that have broken that cycle, that have continued to grow GDP and not increase emissions. We need to really double down on that and decouple emissions and economic growth. Those two things need to happen. That needs to happen. Now, the other thing to remember is out of the Paris Accords, the agreement, the goal is to keep the climate system at 1.5 degrees of warming. So if you think about that, what that means is there's a certain budget of carbon that's available that we can emit into the atmosphere and still keep the climate system in equilibrium at 1.5 degrees C warming, right? That carbon budget that's available to meet that 1.5 degree cap, or to just stay below that 1.5 degree cap, will be exhausted by 2030. At this moment in time, it's hard to envision how we will not hit that cap, because it's merely 7 years away. Merely 7 years away. So that's a big challenge if you want to think about developing technology to remove carbon from the atmosphere. Enormous challenge. So what that means to me, what do I personally think, is that adaptation is the problem that we're going to be faced with for some time to come. Even if emissions went to zero today, suppose we were able to completely reverse course and go to renewables globally everywhere today, that would mean the climate system would continue to warm for the next 30 to 50 years. So that what that means is that we have an adaptation problem that we have to solve going forward. We have no choice. And so the way I think about, and you know, I'm not the only one to think of this, sort of a expert's analysis of how the adaptation problem is going to be before us, is there's the kind of maps that I just showed you, right? There's that one corner, this kind of maps that I just showed you, how to provide information, you know, drilling down here, just sort of general guidance, you know, some global hazard maps, some websites, things like that. That's useful. That's useful. It's stuff that's thrown over the fence. It's not tailored. It's hard to turn that into entrepreneurship. Then there's a little bit more. There's some conversation between experts, you know, a little bit more times the service, a lot of sharing, policy services, things like that, but still quite generic, not really focused. And then the where we're going, or where we need to go, is in starting to think about climate projection services, a little bit like weather prediction services, but climate projection services that are going to be commercially offered, tailored to specific decision makers, and you know, across a spectrum of users. And this will require expert analysis. And you can think of this as something that might emerge from the federal government. This is something and could be quite useful in terms of local governments. Now, where I think the entrepreneurial opportunities are is a much more integrated, much more holistic, much more customized climate services that are tailored for specific decisions. So the science that's done is based on the decision or the entrepreneurial relationship that needs to be achieved. And so this is something that isn't being done and isn't being planned, or I would say it's just getting started. You're starting to see these companies emerge. We have Tomorrow.io, we have Jupiter Intelligence, a lot of these climate data, not a lot, but a few of these climate data companies emerging. In the wildfire community, there's some technology that's being developed that's climate tech, but this, you know, trying to use better climate information to figure out how to deploy firefighting resources at a commercial level. There's some of these things are happening. There's you know, sort of a several-fold increase, but it's still, we're still on that sharp exponential growth of using climate information to develop entrepreneurship that addresses that adaptation problem. And then just one last note, because I'm way over time, I want to I want to remind ourselves, I think it's really important to, and this gets to Nick's comment about doing good. We need to be mindful of the fact that adaptation, if we don't bite off some of the inequities in the world and some of the poverty problems in the world, when we try to implement that adaptation, it's not going to be effective. And this is what's often referred to this adaptation gap. And so if you look at this dashed line here, hopefully you can see my cursor, this dashed curved line here. If you have a good outcome in terms of reducing emissions, you still have that adaptation problem. But if we don't deal with the inequality and the poverty issues along the way, that adaptation is not going to work, and we're going to pop up into a trajectory or a course that's going to lead to an unequal distribution of loss and damage, and that's going to be a big challenge for us. So we have a challenge in terms of innovation, climate tech, hyper local information, making that available. We're not doing that now. How that will spur an innovation. At the same time, we do need to sort of bite off this inequality and poverty issues to make sure we don't get stuck in this adaptation gap. And with that, I will take any questions if there are.
We're not gonna have time for questions, but thank you so much for sharing all this valuable information. It's been amazing, and I'm sure our audience enjoyed it. We will also make it available after the event for those that could not join us from around the world. Not all time zones could be here with us today. So thank you so much. Again, wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
And now please allow me to share a brief bio about our next keynote speaker, Martin Curry. Welcome, Martin. Thank you for joining us from Europe today, and happy Earth Day. Martin is a senior manager for sustainability, climate change, and natural resources at Economist Impact, which is part of the Economist Group, where he leads sustainability-related policy and thought leadership projects in the EMEA region. He has directed Economist Impact projects in areas such as food sustainability, decarbonizing technologies for cities, getting to net zero, the circular economy, ESG and real-world impact, social impact, electric vehicles, and advanced plastic recycling. He is also the editorial lead of the Sustainability Project and head of the World Ocean Initiative, inspiring bold thinking, new partnerships, and the most effective action to build a sustainable ocean economy. His previous roles at the Economist Group, where he has been since 2011, include managing editor, global health lead, and Europe editor at the Economist Intelligence Unit. Martin is a trustee of the New Economics Foundation, a think tank focusing on social, economic, and environmental justice, a member of the Advisory Committee for the UN Environment Programme's Global Environment Outlook for Business, a senior rapporteur at World Water Week, and a faculty member in the Food and Sustainability Certificate Program provided by the European Institute of Innovation for Sustainability. He earned a Bachelor of Economic and Social Science Studies in International Relations from Aberystwyth University and a master's degree in Diplomacy and International Relations from College of Europe. Welcome. You have an impressive bio, but I know our audience will be so pleased to hear all your valuable insights. I've heard you speak before, and I'm excited to listen to you again. Welcome.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Ingrid, and thanks so much to the whole organizers as well of the World Business Angels Forum at the Miami office. So I'm very excited to be with you, and happy Earth Day as well. And it's great to follow in the footsteps of Nick and Ben, who set the scene really well in terms of, Nick mentioned what's good for the planet can also be good for business. And that's definitely something that is very close to my heart. I mean, I work at Economist Impact, which is part of the Economist Group. And we believe that, business can be part of the solution and can really help to develop and innovate to find solutions to, the three crises we really face. And that's also important to highlight on Earth Day, that we're dealing, of course, with the climate crisis, but we're also dealing with a massive loss of biodiversity, as well as pollution as well. So these three crises in a way are interconnected, and it's an opportunity on this Earth Day to really highlight, the importance of, dealing with all those three crises together. And of course, Ben also mentioned the importance of innovation and technology to deal with some of the issues around climate change and the fact that we're not meeting targets by 2030. And as you know, the theme for the Earth Day this time is investing in our planet. So I will be focusing on that. So I will be sharing my presentation. I hope this works. So the focus for me today will be about why the time has come to invest in ocean ecosystems. And as Ingrid mentioned, I'm head of the World Ocean Initiative, which is part of Economist Impact, part of the Economist Group. And I just wanted to highlight before I start where the part of the business that I'm in, the Economist Group, where that sits. It is obviously part of the Economist Group that produces the Economist newspaper, which, as you all know, is known for explaining today's world and seeking to discern tomorrow's. It's known for its rigorous independent reporting. But then we also have our education part of the company, which focuses on advancing careers in a globalized world, and Economist Intelligence, which is all about subscription service to data analysis forecasting to help guide informed decisions. And I'm in the part of the company that is called Economist Impact, which is a really exciting, relatively new part of the Economist Group that brings together all of the different insights, innovation, and influence that we produce through, for example, the indexes or scorecards and research programs that we do. And it's really about catalyzing growth and change in the world. So that's the part of the business that I sit in. So have a look at our reports and studies that we produce. And as part of what we do, we have our World Ocean Initiative. So I wanted to focus on that today and the work that we do in protect and in informing and catalyzing action on investing in ocean ecosystems. And I wanted to give a very brief introduction to what actually marine natural capital is, which is an important part of looking at ocean ecosystems from a more economic lens. And then talk about seagrass meadows, which is something that people might not have heard about. And it's critical and often neglected as an important ocean ecosystem that can help us tackle these three crises that we mentioned, including climate change. And then I wanted to talk a little bit of mangrove forests, coral reefs, seaweed, and ultimately concluding with the rise of blue carbon markets, because as businesses and investors, we have a huge opportunity to support these ecosystems. And there's an economic opportunity here as well in terms of the emergence of blue carbon markets before concluding. So I wanted to start, looking at what is marine natural capital and why is it important? Why is an economic lens on these planetary systems and these kind of ecosystems important? I mean, first of all, the ocean absorbs between 25 and 30% of global CO2 emissions. So it's vital as a carbon sink. And Ben mentioned the importance of looking at carbon removal. And of course, technology and technological innovation would be important, but we already have an incredible ecosystem here that absorbs around a third of all of the emissions we produce, and that's the ocean. So restoring and harnessing the ocean's capacity and investing in the ocean's capacity to do that is absolutely vital. Already about 33 billion tons of carbon dioxide, and that's about 3/4 of the world's emissions in 2019, are locked away in the planet's blue carbon sinks. And these systems are known as blue carbon because this is really kind of ocean-based carbon sinks, and it's absolutely vital that we do not neglect these ecosystems. And as part of what the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy has done, they looked at the maximum annual emission reductions for 5 ocean-based climate actions. And one critical part of that is actually looking at kind of restoring those coastal and marine ecosystems. But there are other ocean-based solutions as well that can help reduce the climate crisis and mitigate the crisis. So I mentioned that it is absolutely critical to see the ocean as a vital carbon sink, but also it is important to keep in mind that there's huge emission reduction potential from these systems. So if we restore these systems, we can help to restore the ocean's natural capacity to store carbon. For example, this is just one example of many that I could give in this area. Restoring coastal wetlands has a potential to mitigate climate change in terms of 14% of the whole mitigation potential in the world just from restoring coastal wetlands, and that could help us to keep global heating below 2 degrees. I mean, Ben highlighted that 1.5 is still the target, but we're also now looking at at least meeting that 2-degree target if we can't meet that 1.51. But then there's also something really important about these ecosystems, and that is that they don't just help us to mitigate climate change, because Ben also mentioned in his presentation that now we're looking at adaptation because we have to deal with a warming planet. And the adaptation potential of these ecosystems is enormous, because they help to build resiliency, they help to build the biodiversity around them, and these ecosystems can help us to adapt. And I will talk about that later as well. And some of the technical solutions that complement these have been discussed. So, for example, storing carbon in liquid form, increasing alkalinity, electrochemical removal. There's a new emerging area called MCDR, which is marine carbon dioxide removal, and there are lots of exciting opportunities to help the deep blue sea store more carbon. I'm not going to go into depth on that, but it's an incredibly exciting area as well. Here's just a quote just to highlight, and this is a quote that that we have included in our research and our publications on the World Ocean Initiative. This is from Mark Guff, who's the CEO of the Capitals Coalition. He really highlights that there is, this international action is absolutely necessary to help to really appreciate the ocean's value, to help tackle some of the crises that I mentioned. And he says also that it requires articulating value in ways that resonates with decision makers. So it's not just about kind of protecting and preserving and conserving the ocean and restoring and regenerating the ocean for the ocean's own sake, which in itself, it has a value. And there are lots of conservationists out there who do very great work in that space. But us as also looking at it from an economic and business perspectives, it is important to highlight the value of these ecosystems in helping to restore our economic system as well. I wanted to start with seagrove meadows, because it's easy to often start with other things like coral reefs. They're obviously beautiful and nice, and mangrove forests are much more visible because you have these trees and everything. But now seagrove meadows is often forgotten because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. But they're absolutely vital because 0.2% they're just 0.2% of the ocean seafloor, but they hold actually 10% of the ocean's capacity to store carbon. And that has been valued by the likes of Ralph Sharmi and IMF leading economists, who now also looks at the value of nature. Seagrass meadows have been valued at $2.3 trillion, just the carbon sequestration value. And that there are lots of additional elements of seagrass that is often neglected. It has so far been neglected by policymakers. 159 countries in the world actually have seagrass. This chart as well highlights that only very few countries have included seagrass in their nationally determined contributions, which is basically the climate action pledges that countries make. So very few countries have actually highlighted that that they have seagrass as a climate mitigation action, and restoring these as a climate mitigation action. But I already highlighted that it's not just about climate mitigation. It's also about additional benefits. They provide nursery and foods, nursery for fish. They're a vital food source. They're home for many fish. They protect coastlines. They produce oxygen, they clean the ocean around them. And I mentioned that we have these 3 interconnected planetary crises: biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. And seagrass is amazing because it helps us tackle all 3 at the same time. But the issue is that there has been a massive decline in these vital ecosystems, 7% per year since 1990. Up from just 0.9% before 1940. So there is a risk that we undermine these ecosystems. And of course, there have been marine heat waves that have depleted these incredible ecosystems. But there are some initiatives, and it's important that we all look at seagrass in a different way now that we know what kind of potential it has. There are some projects in the UK, for example, Project Seagrass, Sky Ocean Rescue, Carlsberg and WWF UK, for example, came together to work with local communities to really help to plant these new seagrass meadows, 2 hectares of meadows. So there are some of these initiatives that are starting to crop up, which is encouraging to see. This quote again highlights what I said earlier about out of sight, out of mind. There's really this focus on mangroves, which is great, but they're the easiest ecosystem to get to, as highlighted here by Steve Lutz, the Blue Carbon Program leader at Grid Arendal. It is important to look at mangrove forests as well, though, because they're incredible, effective carbon sinks. They store about 20 billion tons of carbon, up to 50 times more than tropical forests. Also, they are really good because they don't burn as much, and they're protected from wildfires. So there is huge potential also in terms of protecting and investing in these ecosystems to ensure that all that carbon potential is preserved. They're also similar to seagrass. They're also nurseries for global fisheries. They also provide additional adaptation services in terms of storm and flood defense services. The value of those have been estimated at $65 billion or more in terms of property damage prevention each year. They shelter more than 15 million people. Of course, there are insurance implications. If you can restore these mangrove forests that help to prevent other climate disasters, then this is a great result for insurers, but also in terms of preventing all this damage from climate disasters. But there is, again, similar to seagrass, there is a disturbing development in terms of our neglect, the planet's as humanity, our neglect of these ecosystems, because over the past 50 years we have lost half of all of the world's mangroves. That's just incredible, given that how important these ecosystems are. But policymakers are waking up, and as business leaders we should also encourage investment in these ecosystems. Policymakers in the Seychelles, for example, have pledged to protect 100% of their mangroves and seagrass by 2030. There are restoration projects in the likes of Vietnam and Colombia, for example. And you can read more about these as well on our website, impact.economist.com/ocean, where we highlight some of these projects and the economic potential of these projects. And of course, there are development potential as well. For example, in Sri Lanka, almost 8,000 women, for example, and young people have trained in mangrove conservation, and then in return they get microloans, etc., expand their own businesses, and that fosters financial stability. So it's also important to connect these programs with local economic growth. And I wanted to highlight as well one quote here from one of the people that we interviewed for our report, Mark Huxton, professor of teaching and research in environmental biology at Edinburgh Napier University, and he highlighted that taking a simple projection of rates of loss, all mangroves will disappear within the next 100 years. And that's really something would be quite tragic. So we have to start really investing in these ecosystems. Coral reefs, a lot of people will have heard of these. I don't need to go into detail, but it's important to highlight that it's less than 0.1% of the ocean floor, but 37% of fish species live around coral reefs. So they're absolutely vital habitat for endangered species, for sharks, for rays, for marine mammals. So it's really important to invest in coral reefs. Ecosystem services are also vital. Again, they absorb 97% of coastal wave energy. So the things like tsunamis and these kind of things are far less dangerous because of these systems. But the more we erode the capacity of coral reefs, the more coastal communities will be hit by natural disasters. More than 1 billion people depend on coral reefs for food and well-being. Over 330 million people live within 30 kilometers of reefs. So it's really important to highlight that a lot of people on this planet depend on coral reefs, also for jobs, for fishing, recreation, tourism, and so on. And there's also natural medicine that comes from coral reefs. It is, again, also important to highlight the destruction of these ecosystems in the past. Half of the world's coral reefs have already been lost. 90% could be lost by mid-century. So it's really important to invest in them. Conservation initiatives have been started in countries such as Madagascar, Chile, Hawaii, Nicaragua. There's the Coral Reef Initiative, Reef Rescue Initiative, which is a global partnership that also includes WWF, Wildlife Conservation Society, Rare Care International, and others. And they have come together to identify, with their experts, what are the kind of really important, globally significant coral reefs that need to be safeguarded in a way that addresses the needs of communities as well. And again, it is also important to highlight some of the marine protected areas that have come up. There is, for example, in Belize, a collaborative management system, a public-private partnership as well, that has started to create more bankable structures around this. And again, this is an investment opportunity as well, because they have started to build investable, bankable projects around MPAs. In Belize, for example, around the Tufnell, the Turnef Atoll MPA in Belize, which is kind of an initial investment of 1.2 million, but it's only the start, and there are many more of these opportunities. And then, so this quote just highlights, how important it is to cooperate and contribute to planning for the long-term health of coral reefs. And it involves a lot of different stakeholders, such as tourism operators, port authorities, insurance companies, zoning officials, and of course, the local communities that are mostly affected. And then there's something that is often not really seen as blue carbon, but it's also important to highlight, and that's seaweed. It's important also as a carbon sequestration opportunity, because 173 teragrams of carbon per year are sequestered through seaweed. They provide a lot of services also in biomitigation services, so between 1.2 and 3.5 billion US dollars. So there is that economic opportunity as well, and that's that's a huge opportunity. It's about 26% of the current global commercial value of the entire industry, and so this is a critical part of what the seaweed industry is about, is that biomitigation, and it's going to grow as well by more than 12% annually to 2026. To 85.5 billion. So it's a huge business opportunity as well. And there are applications in food, feed, fertilizers, pharmaceutical, cosmetics, biofuel, a lot of opportunities for business to invest in. There are a couple of case studies that we highlighted on our website. Again, have a look at some of those articles. In Indonesia, for example, there are projects that create more than 1 million jobs. Many former artisanal fishers who had lost their jobs are going back into fisheries through seaweed aquaculture. There's also the permaculture opportunity, which is in a way like kind of these submerged platforms where kelp grows. So to really kind of overcome, some of the challenges, with these smaller scale projects. And they actually sometimes use solar powered pumps and so on. So they integrate some of, other renewable sources of energy to help with these kind of, with these kelp forest farms. And then finally, there are some challenges, of course. The more this becomes a commercial opportunity, the riskier the risk there is that there could be a lack of genetic diversity. Of course, these ecosystems are also at risk from marine heat waves, so climate impact as well. And at the moment, there are also problems around access to finance for some of these projects. And in terms of seaweed farming, there are multiple opportunities that are highlighted here by Dodon Yamanis from Mary Oceans and Patty Tabak from Seagreen. Both we highlighted on our website. They talk about the benefits, but obviously it's not a panacea for mitigating climate change. There needs to be this integrated coastal ecosystem approach. So again, it's about working with those communities as well and helping them to generate income. And just finally, I wanted to highlight the rise of blue carbon markets, because what is exciting here is that this is also an opportunity again for investors to come in and help to restore these ecosystems, but also there is an economic opportunity here. They're relatively new compared with markets for carbon sequestration on land, such as tree planting and so on, but there's this huge potential now because there's been global demand for these carbon credits, which is increasing 15-fold to be worth 50 billion by 2030. There's been a backlash, as you know, against carbon credits because many have been found not to actually help with carbon sequestration. The great thing about blue carbon in particular is the co-benefits. As I mentioned, this is not just about climate mitigation, it is about creating employment, skills, community well-being, and of course the adaptation services. So often these blue carbon credits are higher quality than those on land. There is a supply-demand gap at the moment, but that will narrow the more there is kind of investor interest in it. So there will be more supply of viable projects. And some of these projects are highlighted here, which we highlighted on our website. These 12 organizations that have come up with really interesting blue carbon projects. And they won a challenge here, the Blue Carbon Challenge. And of course, this has to be integrated into climate mitigation strategies. There are now trading platforms coming up. The Natural Capital Protocol for the Ocean is being developed. And of course, it's being highlighted in nationally determined contributions as well. One case study that we highlighted on our website is the Mikoko Pamoja project in Kenya, which is a really exciting project. We also filmed a video, like a film with the community there, which has been certified by Plan Vivo, and 65% of the revenues are reinvested in the community. So have a look at that case study. And here is just a quote from Christian Teleki, the Global Director of the Ocean Program at the World Resources Institute, who highlights that blue carbon is going to grow exponentially in the next 12 to 18 months. It's going to be a huge opportunity to solve the climate crisis, but also looking at food security and poverty and other challenges from the Sustainable Development Goals. So in conclusion, have a look at impact.economs.com/ocean to learn more about some of these projects. We heard that there's huge mitigation potential, not just mangrove forests, which is often the focus, but also seagrass, seaweed, and so on. There are these co-benefits. So in terms of adaptation, biodiversity, community resilience. However, they are under threat from climate change, development, pollution. So it's actually really important to not just conserve, but also to regenerate these systems. Policymakers have started to embrace the blue carbon potential, and as business leaders, we can do the same by starting to see this as a business opportunity, but also as something where we can, really have a positive impact in the world. But there is this need for this blue carbon to be embedded within a holistic approach that also looks at community dimension, the social dimension as well. So thanks a lot for having me. Have a look at our website, impact.economs.com/ocean, or follow me on Twitter, for example, or connect on LinkedIn to learn more about this. So thanks again for having me, and happy Earth Day.
Thank you, Martin. You did an amazing job also trying to pack a lot of information in very short amount of time. So we're grateful. And yes, we're encouraging everyone to not only check out the website, but also be engaged and contribute. Thank you so much. And again, we're now reminding all our audience, we've heard from academia, we heard from Martin, who, as you heard, represents the Economist Impact Group. And now we're going to move to our panel discussion, which will share what entrepreneurs do, at least a few examples, give some glimpse of what you can do in the entrepreneurship ecosystem to be able to contribute to net zero. So please allow me to introduce our three guests that will represent different facets in the entrepreneurship ecosystem so that we can share with our audience what they can maybe also help with and become engaged with. The first introduction is Mary Pagano. Welcome. Mary is the founder and CEO of Hera Media Group, focusing on all things Hera and the empowerment of humanity and the planet all around the world. Mary is enthusiastic about uplifting women in all capacities of living their best life and surpassing their dreams and full potential. She is an angel investor for female-founded companies and is on the advisory board of several tech companies and charities, including WBAF Miami, Hera the Light of Women, Femme Foundry, and many others. Over the last 25 years, Mary has established herself as a female leader in a male-dominated tech industry. She's worked for large Fortune 30 companies such as Motorola, AT&T, GE, and many other tech startups in a variety of leadership capacities that I can't even enumerate them all, otherwise we're never gonna finish. She held not only numerous key leadership roles, but also they covered numerous industry verticals and market segments. She has an uncanny ability to help companies and charities to see their potential vision and achieve it by using emerging or frontier technologies. Thank you, Mary, for joining, and we're looking forward to hearing about your exciting project for smart cities.
Thank you, Ingrid. Glad to be here. Happy Earth Day.
Great. Thank you. And now I'll introduce Mr. John Gomez. Mr. John William Gomez is president of RevExpo Consulting, as well as president of Institute for Science, Entrepreneurship, and Investments, who is also sponsoring our innovation showcase later on today. He is also WBAF International Partner and a trustee member at the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. He's known as an experienced global leader with a passion for promoting multi-stakeholder partnerships to advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the deployment of emerging technologies for smart, resilient, and net zero-centric cities. With his international experience in digital strategy, as well as digital and business transformation, Mr. Gomez has led global projects and initiatives that drive sustainable innovation and create value for all stakeholders. He holds several executive certifications, including a Global Diplomacy for United Nations certification from the University of London, a Disruptive Strategy certification from the Harvard Business School, a Design Thinking certification from MIT, and an Innovation certification from Cornell University, as well as an active member of the Government Blockchain Association and the lead of the Education Technology Group there. And last but not least, a Master Black Belt in Six Sigma, which we all know is very much needed when you try to do business transformation. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Gomez, and we're looking forward to hearing how the Institute has contributed to net zero.
Thank you, Dr. Ingrid. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you, sharing some important insights for what we are celebrating today, Earth Day. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Norleen. Norleen and I go back also a few years where we've been pushing the net zero and ESG agenda when not many people wanted it. So I'm glad finally today on Earth Day, we get to celebrate it together. Norleen is an impact entrepreneur and advisor, passionate about business, entrepreneurship, and learning with purpose. She aims to bridge the digital divide for greater inclusion, access, and positive impact for people and the planet. She's a well-known advocate of conscious capitalism, tech for good, and purpose-driven multi-stakeholder partnerships. She usually speaks on inclusion, tech, and sustainability. She is the founder of several organizations and involved in more than 20 projects worldwide. She never sleeps either, like many of us on this call. She's the founder of Impactoverse, an impact engagement ecosystem that aims to increase inclusion and access, allowing for agencies, brands, and influencers to align with causes, build community, improve earnings, and impact outcomes. She's bridging in this organization the gap from Web 2 to Web 3. An MVP was launched recently and is currently in beta testing mode for the Impactoverse, so we're encouraging you to check this out. Impactoverse also offers done-for-you blockchain services specifically for impact-focused projects. They support setup, growth strategies, and development. She's also the co-founder of Think Ocean, where she's working to end the plastic pollution crisis. She's also the founder of Safa Global, a sustainability advisory company helping businesses make sustainable, attainable, and maintainable products. And several other organizations. I would like to highlight only your engagements and projects that are also for the Government Blockchain Association, where you're very active in the sustainability working group, your Africa project, where you work with key stakeholders to improve sustainable trade, and Intel Aqua, a technology for sustainable fish farming, where you're the VP of Impact. And again, these are just a few highlights of all the wonderful work you're doing around the world. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ingrid. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. Yes, so I'm looking forward to sharing and supporting any and all of you that I can on this journey, and happy Earth Day.
Thank you. So to kick our panel discussion off, I had a general introductory question for each one of you, and we'll follow the same pattern. I'll start with Mary, then John, then Nolene, so that we keep it organized. But can you share, what role do you think emerging technologies have in attaining the 2050 net zero agenda? All of you have touched technology at various stages in your life and continue to be involved in almost every frontier or emerging technology. And as we heard earlier from our keynote speakers, they set the stage nicely as what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, what governments, academia, and business leaders need to do. But now I want you to just give very concrete examples for those that wish to start tomorrow morning at 7 to help our net zero agenda. So, Mary, what do you see?
Oh my gosh, darling. Ingrid, there's so much going on. And I have to say that the wind and the solar, I mean, energy is by far the biggest polluter that we're, being challenged with. And I like the idea that now solar companies are looking to make just everyday windows, solar, adaptable. So that way we can not just do our roofs, and businesses are doing solar farms like Home Depot is doing, but for us, for Harris City, we are investigating all kinds of energy solutions that we would put into Harris City when we go into Morocco. And Hera Media then is interviewing and investigating some of these opportunities that could be potential for as we move forward. But there's more than just the energy sector. I mean, I think everybody realizes the importance of transportation, that not only the electric vehicles, but what about just using public transport? I think people forget that it's that we're all in this together, the whole world. This is about consumers. This is about how we live at home and how we work and how we run our businesses. And the migration path definitely has to be improved. And I think that there's, I've talked to some folks that are building AI solutions for the climate world to be able to, if you plant trees here, how does it impact it over here? And, looking at the world globally in regards to not just eliminating, but things that you're doing using nature, right? I mean, they're now talking about whales and how important whale poop is to the ocean floor to be able to, provide more fish and, take more CO2 out of the air. So it's a combination of technology and just innovation using nature. And between the both of them, we can make some good progress. It even gets down to creating more competition. It's also delivering on the promise of hydrogen, right? Expanding the carbon capture, remaking the power grid so we supply it with clean electricity, and of course launching the next revolution in agriculture is really important. But I also just want to emphasize the fact that as a user, as a person, as a consumer, you use your own bags to instead of using plastic, use electric car, use public transportation. There's so many things that you can do in your own backyard to reduce your carbon footprint. And also where you spend your money. If you spend your money in areas that are creating more demand for fossil fuels, then we're never going to move forward. So we really have to take the ownership upon ourselves to take those actions. And I know that that's a story that Hera Media is pushing quite often, because we want people to be happier. We want a better humanity, right? And how we respect each other around the world, and also how we respect the planet.
Thank you. John, what do you see on boots on the ground? What's happening in terms of emerging technologies and how they can contribute to the 2050 net zero agenda?
Thank you, Dr. Ingrid. I think this is a great question. And actually, I believe emerging and frontier technologies are expected to play a significant role in making progress in attaining the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, by 2030. And the United Nations Net Zero Agenda by 2050. I believe that one of the critical areas where these technologies can make an impact is in the transition to a more sustainable energy system. Technologies such as artificial intelligence and blockchain, as an example, can help optimize the transition to a more sustainable energy system. Also, the energy usage and reduce waste by monitoring and analyzing real-time energy usage data, as an example. They can also facilitate the deployment of renewable energy sources and smart grids by enabling secure and transparent energy transactions. Satellite internet and 5G can provide access to real-time data on weather patterns, carbon emissions, and other environmental indicators, enabling better monitoring and management of natural resources. I also think that this information can be used to develop predictive models and forecasting tools that can help communities prepare for and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Cloud and xScale computing can be used to run complex simulations and models that can help identify the most effective strategies for mitigating and adapting to climate change. These technologies, I also believe, can also facilitate collaboration and data sharing between researchers and policymakers, helping to speed up the development of innovative solutions. In addition to these, also for any futurists in our audience, I would like to add that quantum technologies have the potential to revolutionize the way we produce and store energy, as well as facilitate the development of more efficient and sustainable materials. Quantum computing, as an example, can help identify new opportunities to renewable energy sources and optimize energy usage in real time. I will conclude this question, or actually this answer, by stating that there are numerous emerging technologies that can power solutions for all SDGs and accelerate the transition to a more sustainable future. However, it is incumbent upon us as a society to deploy them wisely and equitable.
Thank you. And actually, regarding quantum, I can share with our audience that it's not as futuristic anymore. Just 2 weeks ago, The Economist organized a very big conference where they shared that quantum economy is here, and a lot of projects are going on, as well as investments worldwide in the billions of dollars. So I think the futuristic agenda of how quantum can contribute has now become reality. I encourage everyone to look at The Economist. There's another one coming up in 2 weeks. Thank you, John, for that nice highlight of quantum computing. Nolene, what do you see? You were an early adopter of using AI and advanced analytics. You've been involved in blockchain. Now you're helping organizations transition to Web3. What do you see in terms of the potential, how they can contribute to net zero?
Thank you, Ingrid. And yes, I second everything that's come before. And one of the things that I would say, because you asked how can people, if they want to get started right now, tomorrow, how is it that they can do that? And one of the ways of actually getting involved is to become aware of those projects that are actually moving toward this agenda. There are so many incredible solutions out there. Technology is moving at such an incredible pace. One of the biggest things for us to be able to progress that agenda is to allow for that bridge between where people are right now and the ability for them to actually be able to utilize the technologies as they are emerging and at the frontier to be developing solutions. And not just developing solutions, but evolving existing solutions, solutions like carbon capture and utilization and storage. We've talked about energy efficiency and smart grids, smart cities, battery storage. All of these types of things are going to move forward leaps and bounds. And those move forward quickly, or more quickly, when there is greater support and when people actually understand what the potential is. So I think one of the biggest things that people can start to do is to become aware of what is already out there and look at the ways in which they can get involved in these types of projects. And also to see, I'm an advocate of people and planet, because we cannot see them as being two separate entities. We are interdependent. And everyone has the ability to make certain choices. And we have to remember that in regions where, for example, someone doesn't have the ability to feed their families every day, they don't care about whether food comes in a plastic bag as long as they actually have food for the family. So we need to also be looking at how these ecosystems actually work together, and they're socioeconomic ecosystems. So when supporting projects, consider the knock-on effect of supporting social projects and how that actually impacts on the environment as well, because they are intertwined. But I would say things are moving so quickly. You know, tomorrow there is going to be something new, and it's incredibly difficult even when you're within the space to keep up. So try to get involved, follow people who are in the know, who are sharing information, and really it is all about knowledge and applying what it is that you know to be able to make decisions on the products you choose, on, you know, how it is that you actually go about your day-to-day living, and the decisions you make. It's going to be quite significant in terms of how things progress, and the support that you, as, you know, general public, or basically every single one of us, the decisions that we make in terms of the technologies that we support and the projects that we support, that is what is going to allow these technologies to evolve even further. And, you know, we've heard the technologies, you know, blockchain, smart tech, you know, so much around the energy efficiency and you know, energy monitoring systems. That is truly significant, because that is the way that we actually make more informed decisions as to how we continue to evolve. But there's so much. I'll stop there. I know we don't have too much time.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate this first round, which gave us a very nice overview. For the second one, I wanted to ask what each of your organizations is actually doing, and how you think that multi-stakeholder partnerships can augment and amplify what we're doing. So let's start with the multi-stakeholder partnerships first. Mary, I know your organization works with governments across the world, with academia across the world. So why are you agitating yourself? Why do you think these are so important?
It is so important. And I like what Nolene said earlier. And you have to remember this, the planet doesn't need us. We, the humans, need the planet. I mean, it's our resources for everything, for living. And so this is why, you know, Earth Day and taking care of our planet is so important, because it feeds and sustains us. But when I look at the partnerships, and this is how HERA is addressing it, as with HERA City, as well as with HERA Media Group. And HERA City, so you know, is a nonprofit smart city that we're building. HERA Media is going to be the channel to support it and to promote everything about humanity and the planet. But we look at it not just private and public, but also nonprofit and also government relationships. And I think if we can use our AI tools in such a way, a platform of really making it holistically from both technology as well as nature, that, you know, and that even consumers can get a better understanding, because I think there's a lot of people that don't understand that, oh, it's their problem, right? Well, if you start traveling the world, you recognize that their problem is soon to be your problem. And so we have to look at this holistically in the actions that we take and how we participate. And I think civil discourse has been a big help in many ways, because we still have governments that are subsidizing fossil fuels. So this is something that we need to stop and do the reinvestment into the newer technologies that are available, or fund the newer innovation, whether it's using nature or whatever to progress and create different business models. And I think there's some ownerships within government and also with investors, that when you're putting, you know, products together, and like, for instance, if you're manufacturing throwaway clothes, you should have a solution on the back end that it doesn't end up in the trash. You know, what are you doing about that? And I think some of those things aren't very well thought out with companies as well as governments. But I think the important thing is that we, the people, have more impact than we realize. And I think, you know, by the way you vote and really where you spend your money, because these are what the industries are doing, is they're following the money. You know, there's a need for this, so they're going to continue to do that. So it really comes back to us in our own backyard. I mean, plant trees, you know, watch where you spend your money and take actions in that way. But I think I think some of the governments are starting to take more impact in regards to incentivizing, you know, green solutions and impacts, you know, for humanity and the planet. I'm starting to see more of that. I want to see more. What I struggle with is I see that only 1% of investment funding goes to women, and that's a problem, especially if they're 51% of the global population. So there's a humanity issue here that we need to address alongside, right? So we need to, you know, with AI coming on, there's going to be a transition of jobs, right? So, you know, we want to be able to help that new economy be able to make that shift in regards to, and hopefully it is things about creating businesses to help humanity and the planet, and that's really what we hope for. But
Mary, just in closing, I want to make sure explain in one sentence to people what Hera City is, so that they know that you're starting a city from scratch, which is a Herculean task.
It is a Herculean task. So we are building a smart, green, cognitive city for the future of humanity, for all religions, all genders, all nationalities, with a strong theme to be in honor of women around the world. We want it to be a big visit card. And we really want to stress the importance of green and culture and the future of humanity. So never been done before. We're working with Morocco. We have a letter of intent for 25,000 acres, so plenty of land. You know, we know that it's important that we need to uplift the lives of women around the world, since they are amazing EQ skills. They understand the importance of family and planet and community and all those things. And you know, they're doing a lot of work all over the world. Nobody hears about it. And we want to be able to help get them the funding so that they could do some of these impact solutions for humanity and the planet. So we can't put all the heavy lifting on the men. They need some help.
Thank you. Speaking about that, Mr. Gomez, your career has been at the intersection of various stakeholders, academia, government, entrepreneurship. What role do you see for the strategic partnerships, and is there anything different than what we've seen before now that we have all this digital era come about? And then maybe you can also share briefly what the Institute is doing.
Sure, there is, and going along with the fantastic comments in this panel, I would like to add that our Institute thinking a very multi-stakeholder mindset per se. We believe that the strategic multi-stakeholder partnerships are essential in achieving the ambitious net zero agenda. Collaboration between governments, private sectors, companies, NGOs, academia, and civil society can leverage resources, expertise, and network to develop and implement sustainable solutions. I believe these partnerships can enable knowledge sharing, capacity building, and co-creating of innovative solutions that address complex challenges. Ingrid, they can also enhance transparency, accountability, and stakeholder engagement, fostering social and environmental responsibility. The success of such partnerships relies on shared values, clear objectives, and effective communication. Furthermore, we believe in our institute that the entrepreneurship ecosystem have witnessed an increase in innovative platforms that leverage emerging tech. And you are correct, blockchain and AI are two great examples of technologies that showcase the magnitude of the impact of the net zero economy. For example, blockchain technology can facilitate the tracking of carbon credits, making it easier to transfer and verify ownership, tracking of energy production and consumption, making it easier to optimize the energy use and reduce waste, create transparent supply chains as an example, and make it easier to track the origin and carbon footprint of products. I believe this can help to reduce emissions from production and transportation by identifying the inefficiencies and opportunities for improvement, enable decentralized governance, allowing for a more transparent and democratic decision-making in areas such as climate policy and natural resources management, create new financial instruments, such as green bonds. Artificial intelligence tools can use independently or in combination can be foundational in various domains, such as energy optimization, renewable energy integration, climate modeling, sustainable agriculture, or green transportation. So I believe that in our institute, we are fully committed to contributing to the transformation and a transformational journey to a net zero economy. Our vision is to be the main catalyst for scientific and digitally driven entrepreneurship, as well as to promote sustainable economic growth. Our mission is to produce a state-of-the-art knowledge sharing and educational resources, as well as to be the premier data intelligence, data analytics, and data-driven decision support partner for all stakeholders in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Our institute, we engage in various global initiatives and collaborate in multiple projects that increases awareness of the potential emerging and frontier technologies. We believe that by working together, we can create a sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Nolene. Can you share a little bit with our audience what you do, not only at Impact of Earth, but also your IntelliAqua and Africa project?
Sure. So it's the whole question around partnerships is a very it's an interesting one, and it's linked to all the work that we do. I think to see the value of partnerships, we have to understand what the challenges are, right? So when we're talking about the climate crisis, it's global, it's complex, it's highly politicized. You know, there are often economic challenges, a lot of misinformation and solutions that are quite short term. So what we've been looking at doing is actually working collaboratively to look at how we work across the board with different levels of stakeholders, you know, from government to community, you know, to the individual person, organizations, and how is it that we actually arrive at a point where there isn't just individual agendas that are at play. And we're starting to work towards, for example, with IntelliAqua and looking at fish farming and how it is that that can benefit the farmers, but at the same time allow for more sustainable supply chains, working with, you know, the middlemen as well as the authorities. Work with the government blockchain association is, you know, wholly looking at how we deploy blockchain technology across the board to allow for example, improved supply chain. Looking at, I know there are issues, and one of the speakers earlier talked about, you know, the carbon credit market and how it's come under scrutiny, you know, how that becomes more transparent and there's more evidence around what it is that's actually being done. With Think Ocean, looking at collaborative work with, for example, some of the organizations in Africa projects, and how is it that we collaboratively scale solutions. So we had meetings with trade ministers from regions in Southern Africa and discovered that actually if they work collectively looking at solutions, for example, power supply, they could look at regional power supply, which would be much more effective for the region than each country looking at developing power supply solutions or energy solutions. So there is so much to be gained, but there's still so many challenges. And it's really about us persisting and moving forward with the agenda and standing fast in what it is that we believe we should arrive at in terms of what is best for people and planet. I know that we're short on time, so I will stop there, Ingrid, but if you'd like for me to go on, I can.
Oh, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you sharing highlights, but we're encouraging our audience to check out your websites and reach out to you so that they can maybe help get engaged maybe with some of the projects or help facilitate partnerships that we just mentioned. Thank you so much for the brief panel discussion, but I think it gave our audience a glimpse of what's happening in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And like we just mentioned, there are thousands of startups that are contributing to this ecosystem, and all the governments have pledged net zero with different targets, different timelines, but at least there is movement. I think now, as we are trying today, it's about how do we dedicate human and capital resources to amplify all these efforts, because that's one of the areas that pains me, if you will, because I see a lot of effort around the world and a lot of dollars allocated, but then we're not always having the integration, harmonization, and amplified effect that we desire. So thank you to our keynote speakers. Thank you to our guest panel speakers. If you want to stay on a few more minutes, we have a big surprise. We have to close, of course, one more keynote from our government representative, Councilwoman Digna Cabral, but also 2 startups that are contributing to the ecosystem were selected to present because they were very much aligned, not only with our keynote, but also with the panel discussion. So if you allow us, we'll share one startup. As a reminder, the big innovation showcase with all the startups is at 1 o'clock. So for those of you that want to join that as well, but we only selected 2 because they were highly relevant, and we wanted them to be here with you in person. So Joanna, if you can unmute yourself, we welcome you. Please introduce yourself and the company you represent, Sustain Chain, and highlight not only your vision and mission, but also how people can get engaged with your organization. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ingrid. Thank you for the organizers, and really appreciate the opportunity to share more. And now I understand why, having listened to the incredible discussions this morning and the comments that were just made. I mean, there was a lot of talk about how much innovation is required and how much technology is required. And then Nolene, you just made the perfect comment, which is the number one thing folks can do is actually begin by understanding what projects already exist, right? There is so much innovation and initiatives that are out there, but we all know that in order to achieve, right, what is required, it's really messy and it's super fragmented, and there's a lot of innovation, but it is buried across an infinite number of sites and events and, you know, incubators and so forth. And so we purpose-built Sustain Chain to enable there to be greater awareness and connectivity across the sustainability ecosystem, the players, the change makers, the innovators that are doing the work. We were founded at the behest, actually, of Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, sort of the architect of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the kind of roadmap, right, for the 2030 agenda. And the ask was quite simple, but also, you know, daunting, right, in terms of the moment, which is, hey, how can we better leverage technology, machine learning, natural language processing, and so forth to actually accelerate the pace of progress across this community, right, of innovators and investors and funders and academia and so forth. And so Sustain Chain was built to be that free public utility platform that says we have no horse in this race, right, other than to create and forge more meaningful, valuable connections across this community. So it is powered by a machine learning engine. It's reinforcement learning. It's called Da Vinci. And Da Vinci is designed to sort of illuminate the fastest path between a need, right? I need an innovation to do X, right? And the existing, you know, solution, right? Or innovator across the community. So think of it as, you know, we all know there's much, much, much work to be done. The fastest way to accelerate that progress is actually to tap into the collective intelligence of the people that are doing the work, right? Of the change makers, all of these incredible initiatives that we heard about today, these organizations, right, that are on the front lines, the fastest way is actually just to join forces, collaborate, right? Get behind those initiatives. And so tapping into that collective intelligence is what Sustain Chain was designed to do. So I'm going to share a very quick video, and then we've actually opened up the gate today, right, for access. Again, it's free, but I'm going to sort of invite everybody here to join, right, and share something, share a solution, share an initiative, share a project, right, that you know of, share a need that you might have, and sort of tap into the community more broadly. The other thing I'll say before I share this is that it's, again, no horse in this race. It's backed by a nonprofit. It's called the U.S. Coalition on Sustainability. The only way that we've actually even gotten this far is because it's been built by and for the community. So we've had allies that are actually helping us build the fabric of the technology itself. So if you're a partner that thinks you can be, contributing development resources, or if you are in need of a utility like this to further exchange across your own alliance or community, it's free. We will give it to you. It is literally just designed to forge, and accelerate these connective, pathways, if you will, across the incredible work that's underway. So I am going to share my screen. Hopefully it works. Play this video.
Today, thousands of innovators, impact investors, brands, and NGOs are working to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. But we need to go faster. And now we can with Sustain Chain, the world's first Sustainable Development Goals accelerator. Powered by a partnership between the U.S. Coalition on Sustainability and ThoughtWorks, Sustain Chain is a platform that uses the best of digital technology and machine learning to unite the players, actions, and funding needed to rapidly rebuild supply chains and meet the SDGs. Here's how. After setting up your profile and sharing the sustainability challenges you're most focused on, Sustain Chain becomes an engine for fueling faster, more concerted action and enabling new connections and partnership opportunities. Each time you come back to Sustain Chain, you'll see a live and dynamic feed of opportunities to explore, relevant projects to join, discover new partners, and find new solutions to explore. You can learn more about members and companies within and across industries who share your SDG focus. You can also create and share a new action initiative to tackle an unaddressed gap and tap into the community to find what you need to succeed. Funding, innovations, experts, all with a touch of a finger. Sustain Chain dynamically notifies you of new connection requests, projects, and opportunities to join. The chain is expanding rapidly with new partners across industries, stakeholders, and SDGs, all contributing to the collective intelligence that grows exponentially as the community does. And now we as citizens can join the chain too. With Citizen Chain, citizens can connect directly with their favorite brands and encourage them to take action on the issues that matter most to them, and urge their local representatives in Congress to do the same. As our community grows, so will our ability to accelerate action and progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals. It's time to join the chain to build a sustainable future together.
Thank you, Jonna, for sharing. Do you want to also share with our audience where your founder is today and what your company is doing?
Yes. So today we are broadcasting live in about a half an hour from, Stockholm World Stage on Earth Day. And we have some really exciting announcements. Again, the beauty of this is that it's sort of all about going farther, faster together through partnership. And so we have some really exciting announcements from partners, including XPRIZE, the CTO of XPRIZE, Click, ThoughtWorks, and LinkedIn, and as well as the chancellor from the State University of New York, the largest academic institution in the States. And these are all partners who are going to begin to plug in to the chain and leverage their technology to sort of support and amplify and accelerate the ability to create this surfacing of the missing link across sustainability.
Thank you. And again, I'm sure Mary, when she's setting up her HERA city for women around the world, or Noreen, when she works with all her projects around the world, they might be able to encourage startups to use this as well. And also our WBAF network, we're in 100+ countries. So this recording will be shared with everyone that is in the startup ecosystem. So I hope they can benefit from your app and contribute to all our general efforts so that we can, on Earth Day, not only on Earth Day, but start a new phase in our net zero effort.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Joanna.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you so much for having me and for meeting everyone.
Have a great day. Thank you. And now please allow me to also share a very brief video from Digna Cabral. She's the councilwoman of the city of Doral. And also, for some of you that might be familiar, she's the CEO of the Latin American Chamber of Commerce for Doral. She is also the former vice mayor of the city of Doral and has an extensive background in public service. Digna obtained her education from prestigious institutions, including Columbia University in New York City and the Harvard Kennedy School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She holds and has held numerous not-for-profit and government leadership roles, not only in the city of Doral, but also nationally, and continues her active involvement in key community development initiatives that promote diversity, inclusion, and economic growth. As a matter of fact, this is why she couldn't join us live and send us her video greeting, because today she is participating with the city of Miami to contribute to Earth Day. So please allow me very briefly to share a video that's showing her support to our program.
That our city was incorporated on 2003, and after that we've been able to have different implementations, like having a environment committee. We also signed the U.S. Mayor Climate Protection Agreement in 2005. On 2008, we also approved the Green Plan Master Plan of our city, where we adopted different initiatives. On 2012, we also got the Green Element part of Comprehensive Plan, also the Peace Program, the Climate Action and Implementation Plan. And we were also certified construction to meet the LED building, park, and substation parks here in our city. When it comes to transportation, we have adopted several programs. To mention a few, we have the bike share program, the electric vehicle and charging station, hybrid electric car replacement program, also the bike track program, and the trolley ride marketing project. When it comes to energy, we have implemented solar and energy storage feasibility study, the green power purchasing, the energy audit retro emission, lighting retrofitting, Home and Business Energy Saver Program. We are certified by the Florida Green Building Coalition for local government. This demonstrates our commitment to providing our residents with products and services that are green and sustainable. These programs not only protect the environment, but also improves our operational efficiencies and reduces costs for taxpayers. On the Green Master Plan, the goal of our Green Plan is to conserve natural resources, enhance quality of life, and leave a sustainable legacy for our businesses and future generations. Although there are green standards include monitor and track energy use, monitor and track water use, monitor and track solid waste generation recycling rates, employ green cleaning and maintenance products, use renewable energy as back energy power, become an Energy Star ally, enhance customer to make online payments, emission info posted on website, recycling of end and life of electrical equipment, policy to all computers, equipment that are not in use. Also, we have developed an educational content, recycling station, plastic, glass, and other containers area, lighting, and also outdoor courts, park, playgrounds, improving to bicycle and pedestrian also uses, crosswalk lights, routes that will help to improve the recycling at all government buildings. Once again, I want to thank you for your time and commitment to create a better world for us now and our future generations. To learn more about the green initiatives we have at the City of Doral, I invite, no, ¿qué fue aquí? I'm sorry.
Thank you for that great message. And one second, I think it shares another. One